The young Princess Liara stood in the grand hall of the royal palace, her eyes shining with a mix of excitement and determination. The hall was enormous, with crystal walls that reflected soft lights, and the ceilings were so high that they seemed to touch the sky itself. Every corner of the room was filled with people, advisors, ministers, noble families, and other members of the royal court. They were all gathered for the annual ceremony where potential suitors from different parts of the galaxy would be presented to the princess. Normally, this ceremony was calm and formal, with a strict routine that no one dared to disturb. But Liara had something completely different in mind. As she walked to the center of the hall, her robe flowing behind her, everyone fell silent. The murmurs stopped instantly when she raised her hand, signaling that she wanted to speak. All eyes were on her. She was young, but her presence felt powerful. People knew that when Liara spoke, it was not just a formality. Her words carried meaning and weight. "Today," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I want to make a declaration." A hush fell over the audience as everyone leaned forward, curious. "I will only marry a human." The words echoed through the grand hall like a thunderclap. People looked at each other, stunned. Some gasped, some whispered nervously, and some even shook their heads in disbelief. Humans were a species that had been considered primitive by her people for centuries. They were known for being unpredictable, emotional, and fragile compared to the advanced technology and disciplined society of Liara's world. The idea that a princess of the royal family would choose a human as a fiancé was unheard of. Mnitak, King Liara's father, was seated on his elevated throne at the far end of the hall. His face showed both surprise and worry. He loved his daughter deeply, but he also understood the consequences of her declaration. The queen, sitting beside him, looked equally concerned, although her eyes softened when she saw the determination in Liara's gaze. They knew their daughter had always been independent, curious, and brave, but this was something even they had not expected. Liara continued, her voice steady. "I have studied humans for many years. I have watched them from a distance, learning about their lives, their struggles, and their joys. I admire their creativity, their kindness, and their courage. I do not wish to marry someone just because tradition demands it. My heart and my choice are my own." Her words caused a wave of reactions. Some nobles whispered about scandal, while others looked thoughtful, considering her words carefully. The royal council, which was made up of the wisest and most respected advisors, began quietly discussing among themselves. This was more than a personal choice. It was a decision that could affect political alliances, trade agreements, and even the reputation of their planet among neighboring worlds. Despite the tension in the room, Liara remained calm. She had anticipated resistance, but she believed that her people would eventually understand. She had spent years learning about humans, studying their history, observing their art, and even reading their stories. She was fascinated by how humans faced challenges despite their limitations, and how they celebrated life in ways that her own people rarely did. To her, humans were not inferior. They were unique, resilient, and inspiring. Some of the young nobles tried to challenge her decision, asking why she would choose a species so different from their own. Liara smiled gently. "Difference does not mean wrong. Just because humans are not like us does not mean they cannot be good companions, loyal partners, or wise friends. I have made my decision with careful thought. I am not choosing rebellion. I am choosing love and understanding." The hall remained silent for a few moments as her words sank in. Then one by one the murmurs grew louder. Some were critical, some were curious, and a few were admiring her courage. In her people's society, tradition was strong, and defiance was often frowned upon. Yet Liara's declaration was not reckless. It was thoughtful, deliberate, and backed by years of observation and study. Her parents finally stood. The king cleared his throat, his voice echoing through the hall. "Liara is young, and her choice is unusual," he said, "but she is wise beyond her years. Perhaps we should listen, rather than dismiss her words immediately." She has always been curious, and curiosity often leads to discoveries we cannot foresee. The queen stepped forward, her hand gently touching Liara's shoulder. "My daughter," she said softly, "your courage is admirable. Your heart is true, and your curiosity is boundless. We may not fully understand humans, but we trust you to follow your path responsibly. We will support you, even if the journey is difficult." Liara felt a wave of relief and pride. She knew this was just the beginning. Her announcement would create ripples across her planet, in the royal court, and even among neighboring civilizations. Some might try to stop her, and some might try to discredit her, but she was ready. She had spent countless hours preparing for this moment, thinking about every possible reaction and challenge. She had also prepared herself emotionally, knowing that following her heart would not be easy. After the ceremony, the princess withdrew to a quiet balcony that overlooked the city below. From there, she could see the vast landscape of her planet, gleaming towers, floating gardens, and streams of light connecting different districts. She took a deep breath and allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The road ahead would be long and filled with obstacles, but for the first time she felt fully alive. She was no longer just a princess fulfilling expectations. She was a young woman making a choice that reflected her values, her curiosity, and her heart. In that moment, Liara knew that her journey was not just about finding a human fiancé. It was about challenging perceptions, bridging worlds, and showing her people that understanding and compassion could cross even the greatest divides. She would face scrutiny, opposition, and doubt, but she also knew that she had the strength, intelligence, and courage to face whatever came next. The young princess smiled to herself as the stars began to shimmer above her palace. Somewhere, far away on a small blue planet, humans lived their lives unaware that one day their world would intersect with hers. Liara felt a sense of excitement and destiny. The adventure of a lifetime was about to begin, and she was ready to embrace it fully. After her bold declaration in the royal hall, Liara knew she could not wait for events to unfold on their own. She wanted to see humans up close, to understand their lives beyond the stories and images she had studied for years. So she made a decision that would change everything. She would travel to Earth. Her parents, though cautious, agreed to let her go, under strict conditions of safety and discretion. Liara's aides prepared a small spacecraft for the journey, one that was fast, silent, and equipped with cloaking technology to avoid drawing attention. It was unlike any human-made craft, sleek and almost alive in its design, with smooth curves and glowing lights that shifted color as it moved. The moment the spacecraft left the atmosphere of her home planet, Liara felt a thrill unlike any other. Stars streaked past like silver rivers, and the endless darkness of space felt both intimidating and beautiful. She had traveled through space before, but this trip was different. It was personal. It was not about diplomacy, exploration, or duty. It was about curiosity, connection, and perhaps even love. When she approached Earth, Liara slowed the spacecraft and began observing the planet from orbit. She marveled at the blues of the oceans, the greens of the forests, and the soft glow of cities that spread across continents. Unlike her orderly, technologically advanced world, Earth appeared alive in a chaotic, vibrant way. Patterns of life were irregular, unpredictable, and beautiful. She could see how humans had built their world with a combination of creativity, effort, and sometimes struggle, and she felt a deep sense of admiration. Liara landed in a quiet part of a small city, far from major airports or government centers. She used her cloaking device to disguise the spacecraft as an ordinary building, and she stepped out into a world that was both familiar from her studies and completely new in reality. The air smelled different from her home planet. Fresh, but with layers of scents from plants, food, and city life. The sounds of humans talking, laughing, and moving around filled her ears in a way that felt warm and alive. As she explored, she saw humans in their everyday routines. Children played in parks, parents walked with care, and workers moved purposefully through streets and markets. She watched people sharing meals, comforting one another, and showing kindness in small ways. Every small interaction fascinated her. Humans were messy, emotional, and unpredictable, yet there was a beauty in their imperfection that Liara had never fully understood until now. Her exploration led her to a local science laboratory, a place where humans were attempting to understand the universe just as she had studied them. Inside, she met Ethan, a young scientist who had always dreamed of space travel. He was focused on his experiments, carefully adjusting instruments and taking meticulous notes. When an unexpected experiment went slightly wrong, chemicals began to spill, and without thinking, Liara acted. Using her advanced alien technology, she stabilized the situation and prevented an accident. Ethan turned around, eyes wide, and froze when he saw her. At first, he thought he was dreaming. A young woman with unusual features and a calm, confident aura stood before him. Liara introduced herself carefully, choosing her words to avoid frightening him. She explained that she came from another world and had observed humans for many years. Ethan, though shocked, was fascinated. He asked questions, trying to understand how it was possible, and Liara answered honestly, sharing only what she felt safe revealing. Over the next days, Liara stayed near the city, learning about human life firsthand. She and Ethan began to spend more time together, exploring the balance between human culture and her alien perspective. She learned about Earth's art, music, literature, and science directly from him, seeing the creativity and ingenuity that fascinated her so much. In return, she showed him some of her technology, carefully explaining concepts without revealing anything that could be dangerous if misused. They discovered shared interests in understanding the universe, problem-solving, and helping others, which created a bond that was both intellectual and personal. As they grew closer, Liara observed human emotions up close: the joy in small achievements, the empathy in helping others, the sadness in loss, and the laughter that seemed to heal even small wounds. She admired how humans adapted to challenges, without relying solely on technology, using creativity, teamwork, and hope to overcome difficulties. For Liara, it was a revelation. She had seen advanced civilizations before, but she had never encountered such raw resilience and warmth. Meanwhile, news of Liara's presence on Earth began to reach her home planet, though only vaguely. Observers detected unusual activity and rumors began to spread. Some were curious, others worried, and a few began plotting how to recall her. Yet Liara felt confident. She had prepared for this, and her focus remained on learning and connecting rather than worrying about politics for the moment. She knew that the lessons she was gaining on Earth were worth any risk. During one evening walk through a quiet park, Liara and Ethan sat on a bench looking at the stars above. "I never imagined the universe could feel this alive," she said softly. Ethan smiled, understanding her wonder. "Earth is just a small part of it," he replied, "but sometimes the small parts teach us the most." Liara nodded, feeling a warmth she had not experienced before. She realized that her fascination with humans was becoming something deeper, something that could not be explained by curiosity alone. Over time, Liara and Ethan faced small challenges together. They navigated misunderstandings, cultural differences, and the skepticism of those around them. Each obstacle taught them patience, empathy, and trust. Liara discovered that humans could be cautious, stubborn, and unpredictable, yet they could also show loyalty, courage, and kindness in ways that her structured society rarely allowed. Ethan learned about her world as well, understanding the discipline, knowledge, and responsibility that came with being a princess of an advanced civilization. Through shared experiences, from visiting markets to exploring scientific projects, they built a partnership based on respect, curiosity, and genuine interest in each other's lives. For Liara, it was a revelation to see a world where connection and emotion were just as important as knowledge and technology. For Ethan, it was an extraordinary opportunity to understand life beyond Earth, seeing possibilities he had never imagined. As the days passed, Liara knew her journey was far from over. This visit to Earth was only the beginning. She had learned about human culture, formed a meaningful connection with Ethan, and experienced emotions and perspectives that had been impossible to fully understand from afar. Yet she also knew that challenges awaited her. the politics of her home planet, societal expectations, and the difficulty of bridging two very different worlds. Still, Liara felt a sense of purpose and excitement. She had taken the first steps into a larger world, one that promised discovery, connection, and perhaps even love. And as she looked at the earth below, she realized that her declaration to marry a human was no longer just a statement of intent. It was the start of a journey that could change her life, Ethan's life, and the worlds of both their civilizations forever. Liara had been on Earth for several weeks now, and she was beginning to feel both comfortable and challenged in this new world. Every day brought new experiences, and she was learning more than she had ever imagined. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, and full of surprises, which made her fascinated but sometimes overwhelmed. Even the simplest tasks, like buying food at a market or using local transportation, required her to observe and adapt. Yet through it all, she was never alone. Ethan stayed by her side, patient and encouraging, helping her understand human ways and the subtleties of daily life. Their friendship had grown into something deeper. Liara admired Ethan's kindness, curiosity, and determination, while he marveled at her intelligence, courage, and the gentle way she cared for those around her. They spent hours talking about science, philosophy, and the differences between their worlds. Ethan showed her how humans learned from mistakes, how they helped each other without expecting anything in return, and how small gestures could mean a great deal. Liara, in turn, shared insights from her civilization, showing him the beauty of precision, planning, and knowledge. Together they explored not only Earth but also ideas, dreams, and possibilities neither had considered before. However, life on Earth was not without difficulties. Liara's alien features, though subtle, sometimes attracted attention. Children would stare, and adults occasionally asked strange questions. While most people were friendly, there were those who were suspicious or fearful of anything unfamiliar. Liara had to navigate these moments carefully, learning to respond with calmness and patience. Ethan often acted as a guide, helping her explain herself or gently deflect unwanted attention. Through these experiences, Liara discovered the resilience and creativity humans often use to face challenges. She admired how they adapted to situations without panic, relying on thought, empathy, and collaboration. Back on her home planet, the news of Liara's extended stay on Earth began to stir more than casual curiosity. Advisors and officials who had initially been shocked by her declaration started to worry. Some feared political instability, others worried about the loss of prestige or control, and a few openly opposed her decision to seek a human fiancé. Messages were sent, emissaries were prepared, and plans were quietly discussed to bring her back. Liara was aware of these developments through secure communication channels, and she realized that her choices could have consequences far beyond herself. But she did not waver. She believed that understanding humans was essential, not only for herself but also for the future of her people. As the days turned into weeks, Liara and Ethan faced both personal and cultural challenges together. For example, simple disagreements sometimes revealed the depth of their differences. Liara, used to precise schedules and careful planning, was sometimes frustrated by the human tendency to improvise. Ethan, on the other hand, struggled to understand her need for rules and structure. Yet every disagreement became a lesson in compromise. They learned to listen, to respect each other's perspectives, and to find solutions that honored both human intuition and alien precision. Liara also began to see the importance of emotion in human decisions. On her planet, logic and reasoning often outweighed feelings. But here she saw how emotions could guide actions in meaningful ways. She watched a doctor care for patients with empathy, a teacher inspire students with encouragement, and friends console one another after small failures. These acts, simple yet profound, made Liara understand that strength did not always come from power or knowledge. Sometimes it came from compassion, patience, and courage in everyday life. Despite the growing bond between Liara and Ethan, challenges were never far away. One day, a human journalist spotted her while she was helping at a community center. Questions began to surface about who she was and why she was on Earth. Though she had kept her identity hidden carefully, it became clear that secrets were hard to maintain. Liara and Ethan had to act quickly, using discretion and reasoning to calm the situation. They explained that she was a researcher visiting Earth, carefully avoiding revealing her alien origins. While the journalist left satisfied, Liara realized that life on Earth required constant vigilance and adaptability. Meanwhile, emissaries from her home planet grew more determined to intervene. They sent messages demanding her return, warning of consequences if she refused. Liara read these messages with a mixture of concern and resolve. She understood her people's perspective. They wanted stability, tradition, and control, but she also knew that following her heart was not a rebellion. It was a choice made with thought, care, and love. Ethan supported her, helping her weigh risks and plan next steps, reinforcing the strength of their partnership. In their quieter moments, Liara and Ethan explored Earth in ways that went beyond daily survival. They visited museums, forests, and rivers, observing how humans interacted with nature, history, and each other. Liara took careful notes, recording her observations of human resilience, creativity, and emotional depth. Ethan, in turn, asked her about her culture, her studies, and the traditions of her world. Through these exchanges, they built a deep understanding of each other, creating a connection that was as intellectual as it was emotional. Through these experiences, Liara also discovered the beauty of collaboration. Humans often worked in teams, combining their skills, perspectives, and strengths to solve problems. She witnessed communities coming together to help the less fortunate, scientists collaborating on research projects, and families supporting one another in times of need. Compared to the highly organized but rigid society of her home planet, this fluid teamwork fascinated her. She began to see that adaptability, creativity, and emotional intelligence could be just as valuable as knowledge and structure. The challenges they faced strengthened their bond. Liara learned patience, empathy, and humor in navigating human unpredictability, while Ethan learned discipline, foresight, and responsibility in understanding her advanced perspective. Together, they began to plan for the future, knowing that their growing connection would soon face even greater trials. They had shared adventures, solved small problems together, and discovered a mutual respect that transcended their differences. By the end of this period, Liara had a clearer understanding of what it meant to live among humans. She realized that the path she had chosen was not only about bridging worlds but also about growing as a person. She had discovered a world of emotion, spontaneity, and connection that complemented her own disciplined, knowledge-based upbringing. For Ethan, the experience had opened a window into a universe he had only dreamed of, teaching him patience, curiosity, and the importance of seeing the bigger picture. And so, as the sun set over the city, Liara and Ethan sat together, reflecting on the lessons they had learned and the challenges they had overcome. They knew that their journey was far from over, but the foundation they had built, through trust, understanding, and shared experiences, gave them confidence for whatever lay ahead. The connection between human and alien, between heart and mind, had begun to grow stronger, setting the stage for events that would test their courage, commitment, and love in ways neither could yet imagine. Liara had grown more confident in her time on Earth, but she knew that challenges were approaching. Messages from her home planet became more frequent and urgent. Emissaries were on their way to demand her return, and some factions were openly questioning her judgment. The royal court, once shocked by her declaration, now feared the consequences of her continued stay among humans. Liara understood their concerns. She was asking her people to see the value in something unfamiliar, to trust her instincts and to embrace change. But she was determined. She would not abandon her choice, not after all she had learned and felt. Ethan stood beside her as they read the latest communication from the Royal Council. The message was polite, yet firm. Return immediately, or face disapproval from the highest authorities of her planet. Liara knew this was a critical moment. Her people had expected obedience, yet she had chosen independence and curiosity. She took a deep breath and made a decision. She would respond, not with defiance, but with clarity and reason. When the emissaries arrived, they were surprised to find her calmly waiting. Liara greeted them with respect and warmth, showing that she was not afraid. The lead emissary spoke first, expressing concern for the princess's safety and the reputation of their civilization. "Your actions may cause unrest," he said. "Why insist on a union with a human, a species we have always considered distant and simple?" Liara explained patiently, choosing her words carefully. "I have studied humans for years. I have seen their resilience, creativity, and compassion. They are different, yes, but not inferior. They have qualities we can admire, learn from, and even integrate into our own society. This is not rebellion. It is understanding. It is the beginning of a connection that can benefit both our worlds." The emissaries listened, some skeptically, others quietly impressed. Liara then shared examples of her experiences with humans, including her time with Ethan, observing their daily lives and seeing acts of kindness and courage firsthand. She showed how humans could solve problems, adapt to challenges, and support one another in ways that even her advanced civilization sometimes struggled to achieve. Ethan stepped forward to support her, speaking of the lessons he had learned from Liara. "Princess Liara has shown me that knowledge and wisdom are not limited to one civilization," he said. "We can learn from each other. Our differences do not divide us, they can unite us. Together we can create understanding and cooperation that neither world could achieve alone." Some emissaries remained unconvinced. They worried about tradition, power, and the perception of weakness if the princess pursued her human connection. But others began to see the truth in Liara's words. She had not acted recklessly. She had observed, learned, and reflected. Her choice was deliberate, thoughtful, and filled with purpose. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. Skepticism was replaced with curiosity, and fear was softened by understanding. Liara then proposed a solution. She suggested that the emissaries witness the collaboration between humans and her people, to see firsthand the potential benefits of cooperation. She organized demonstrations, showing how humans and aliens could work together on scientific projects, cultural exchanges, and humanitarian efforts. The emissaries were astonished by the results. Humans adapted to technology, solved complex problems, and even contributed ideas that improved projects. Liara's home planet began to understand that the union she envisioned was not a threat, but an opportunity. Throughout this time, Liara and Ethan continued to work closely. They faced challenges together, from translating alien concepts for humans to explaining human behaviors to her people. Each obstacle strengthened their partnership and deepened their trust. They learned that courage was not just about facing physical danger, but also about standing for one's beliefs, even when confronted by authority, tradition, or skepticism. The Yuan turning point came when Liara invited the emissaries to witness a small festival on Earth, celebrating human creativity, community, and collaboration. They observed children playing, families sharing meals, and neighbors helping each other. They saw art, music, and performances filled with joy and emotion. The emissaries realized that humans, while different, had values that were universal: kindness, courage, curiosity, and a desire to grow. Liara's vision of a union between species began to make sense to even the most doubtful observers. By the end of these demonstrations, the emissaries had changed their tone. They no longer spoke of recall or punishment. Instead, they asked questions, sought understanding, and recognized the wisdom in Liara's approach. The princess had not only defended her choice, but had also created an opportunity for her civilization to grow beyond old boundaries. Her courage, patience, and vision had won over even those who had initially opposed her. Liara felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but she had shown that understanding, respect, and cooperation could bridge worlds. Ethan remained by her side, a constant reminder of the bond that had started with curiosity and had grown into something meaningful, grounded in mutual respect and shared discovery. As the emissaries prepared to return to her planet, They offered a message of cautious optimism. They would report that Liara's actions had been wise and that the potential for collaboration with humans was real. Her parents, upon receiving the reports, were both relieved and proud. They saw that their daughter's determination had not only honored her values, but had also opened a door to a future neither world had imagined before. Liara and Ethan stood together, looking at the horizon as the sun set over Earth. They knew their journey was far from complete, but they had taken the most difficult step, proving that trust, courage, and understanding could overcome fear, tradition, and doubt. Their bond had been tested and strengthened, and the future now held possibilities they could only begin to imagine. With the emissaries returning home, Liara and Ethan finally had a moment to reflect on everything they had achieved. Their time together on Earth had taught them so much, not just about humans and aliens, but about trust, courage, and the power of connection. Liara knew that her choice to pursue a human fiancé was now accepted by her people, but she also understood that this was only the beginning of a lifelong journey. The young princess and the human scientist began to plan for the future. Liara would eventually return to her planet as a bridge between civilizations, but she wanted to ensure that the union was meaningful, respectful, and grounded in understanding. She and Ethan spent hours discussing their goals, dreams, and hopes. They envisioned a future where humans and aliens could learn from each other, share knowledge, and work together to create solutions for challenges that affected both worlds. Life on Earth continued, but it was different now. Liara was no longer just an observer. She was an active participant in a world that had once seemed so foreign. She helped in local projects, volunteered in communities, and shared insights from her world that inspired humans to think in new ways. In return, she continued learning about human emotions, culture, and ingenuity. Every day was a discovery, and every experience strengthened the bond between her and Ethan. Their relationship, while growing closer, faced its own challenges. Cultural differences, expectations from family and society, and the pressure of being watched by both worlds sometimes caused tension. Yet they had learned the skills needed to navigate these challenges: patience, communication, empathy, and compromise. They knew that love was not just about emotions. It was about partnership, understanding, and facing the world together. When Liara finally returned to her planet, she was welcomed not only as a princess but also as a visionary. Her people had learned to see humans in a new light, appreciating their resilience, creativity, and compassion. Liara and Ethan's engagement became a symbol of possibility, showing that differences could be celebrated rather than feared. Traditions could coexist with change, and connections between worlds could enrich both civilizations. The engagement sparked excitement, curiosity, and hope among both humans and aliens. Scientific collaborations increased, cultural exchanges began, and young people from both worlds were inspired to explore beyond their own limits. Liara and Ethan's partnership became more than a personal story. It was a beacon of understanding and unity. They worked together on projects that combined human creativity with alien technology, solving problems in ways neither species could have achieved alone. Over time, Liara and Ethan became a symbol of courage, curiosity, and compassion. They showed that even the most unlikely unions could succeed when built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. Their love was celebrated not only for its personal significance, but also for the message it carried: that connection across boundaries, whether of species, culture, or world, was possible and transformative. Even as they faced new challenges, Liara and Ethan remained committed to each other. Their journey had taught them resilience, problem-solving, and the importance of supporting one another. They knew that every obstacle was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to strengthen their bond. Together, they navigated both familiar and unfamiliar worlds, learning from the past and building toward the future. Liara's story became legendary, shared across both worlds as an example of courage, vision, and love that transcended boundaries. Children and young people